Well, welcome back to the Dungeon Master's Block, the place where we come to talk about the Dungeon Master, the most important person in the game, the only person capable of playing God, killing characters, and lowering the egos of all the people at the table. I am one of your hosts, DM Mitch.
And I'm DM Chris.
And I'm DM Neal, aka Joke Maniac.
And today we are celebrating episode 200 of the DMB finally coming. It's here, and we're jumping right in with one of your favorite series, Creation and Inspiration. We're doing 3 episodes of top 10s, one from each of us. Today we thought it would be only appropriate, since Chris's triumphant return, to start it all off, kick it all off with Chris's top 10.
No pressure whatsoever.
No pressure at all.
Oh yeah,
Chris.
there's none on me, there's none on Mitch. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is just going to suck. So everything you guys do is just going to be like, great, we're redeeming the show.
We just have to do like mediocre and it'll look amazing.
I just meant that I didn't have to do anything to prepare for this. But no, I like your
gotcha.
thoughts too.
That too. There you go.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to hear Chris's top 10s shared. I hope you are as well. Before we jump into top 10s, though, I want to let you know that after our 3 episodes featuring all of our top 10s, we're going to have another special episode celebrating 200 episodes. This time, we're asking for questions from you, the listener. We're going to be doing a special AMA episode. Write in your questions to our email, to our Twitter feed, however you want to get in touch with us. Ask me, Chris, and Neal anything you want. It can be about D&D, other geeky things, whatever you want. We're going to have an episode completely devoted to answering your questions. But for now, before we jump into the meat, Neal, I believe we have a 5-star review to give a shout out to.
We do. And this comes to us from The Silver Walnut, entitled Deserves All the Stars. Surprise, they gave us 5, which is all of them. I heard recently that there were no more 5-star reviews for you all to shout out on your podcast. That is ridiculous. I've been listening since I started as a DM, and this podcast has gotten me out of so many instances of writer's block, some may even say DM's block, giving me inspiration and great ideas to make my campaigns engaging and exciting again. This is my first review I have ever written online, and it is fitting that it's going to the podcast that has been with me from my infant days of being a DM. Thanks for all the great content, and I love their twist on it. Never stop dungeon mastering.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Nice. Love it.
Well, without any further ado, I hope you're ready, because now we're heading to the meat.
I'm starving. We ain't had nothing but maggoty bread for 3 stinking days.
Why can't we have some meat?
The flat meat's back on the menu, boys.
So for the meat today, as you know, we're going back, hearkening back, if you will, to honestly what we feel is one of the favorite things for you, the listener. It's our creation and inspiration episodes, and we thought it would be great to start off with DM Chris, again, because then Mitch and I don't have to do any additional work other than show up. And yeah, I'm trying to think of what else to say about creation and inspiration other than, Chris, what's your number 10?
Ooh.
We're ready to get inspired.
All right. These are always hard because, like, sometimes when you go through them, you realize at the end that the ideas that I'm sure you guys are going to play off of, my top 10 is going to be so drastically different at the end. Like, I wish I could rearrange them in my head now. So anyways, this is my number 10. All right. So a child goes missing in a city. Starts out like any sort of story. This happens regularly in fantasy worlds, I'm sure. But then this child
so
comes
sad.
back.
All right,
So
child goes
sad.
missing.
So
like,
sad. So sad.
Whatever, just another Tuesday.
Just another Tuesday. Anyways, this child comes back after people are searching for him frantically and starts talking about how there's a city under the city that's the same city as this one but slightly different. But he cannot remember how to get back there, but some of the things that he saw were concerning to him. That's the idea. And what do the adventurers do with that is left up to whatever the DM wants to create. But that was an adventure hook for my number 10.
I mean, like, my first initial thought is that how this child presents this when he or she comes back, it might just get blown off, to be honest. Like, because typically, like, a kid is gonna have less like weight in his or her word. Like, they might just think, oh, you wandered off and like you were making up stories as you returned. Like, where did you really go? What did you really like do? Like, so I could see like this kid like talking to one of the adventurers and just being like, there's a city under this city, and the adventurers just be like, all right, kid, let me get back to my tavern drink. Like,
Yeah. Well, then, but does he roll up a sleeve or she roll up a sleeve and
Yeah.
show that she's been marked in some way?
yeah.
That's different than anything they've ever seen before.
Yeah, or
that a child
maybe
wouldn't
you
normally have.
Yeah, or maybe like you leave that place that you encountered that kid, and you hear that story, and everybody, including your players, are kind of brushing it off. Maybe even as a DM, you make it seem like something they should brush off, that it's just a silly little kid. But then, yeah, you drop some sort of clue a session later that makes all the player characters be like, wait a minute, like,
Yeah.
was what that kid saying true?
So I've been quiet because I liked your serious and thoughtful answer, because my first thought was, so Chris has just been watching Futurama and this is old New York and there's just a bunch of mutants.
See, I've never watched Futurama, so there's no way that could be what I was thinking about.
Oh, that's awesome. Because in this does work. It will be marginally more serious, but the idea that there is a town underneath the town that the campaign is in, but it's like fully fleshed out, and there
Right.
are actually creatures or people living down there. So yeah, apparently it's not to Futurama at all.
Not at all.
Okay, you're number 9.
So my number 9 is, it's just more of an it's not necessarily an adventure hook, but it could create a whole bunch of crazy things that happen because of it. So daytime just disappears altogether. It's just gone. And it's just purely night all the time. If you have a moon in your world, it's still reflecting light down, but there's no sun anymore, no source of light. It's still warm, but it's just dark all the time.
Oh, that's weird that it doesn't affect the temperature or maybe any other element besides it's just dark like that. Because that's a direction that it could go in, that it's like, oh, it's like all of a sudden things are colder and the world's going to start being messed up, because if there's no sun, then that's I mean, scientifically that's just going to make the world die. But in a fantasy world, what if it's literally just the absence of the sun's light? That's strange.
8 minutes is all we'd have if the actual sun was like, yeah, I'm not here anymore.
Right.
But the long-term effects is something else I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Is short-term, it's really not going to change anything. I have no idea how long it would take, but eventually one side would just start to get colder and one side would start to get hotter. And then is it long-term that now you just have this weird strip in the middle where everyone exists because the other two sides are uninhabitable? I mean, and obviously the question is, why
Right.
is this happening?
Yeah, in a fantasy world,
Yeah,
the question of why, like, I mean, I can imagine like every priest and every cleric and every paladin like just lamenting and wondering what did we as a world do wrong to deserve this, and what can we do to return the light in the sky back to its place.
The idea that I was going to go with was like, what if, Neal, you said 8 minutes and then we would all, be toast, the opposite of toast, frozen toast, I guess. Like, what would happen if it was just the sun that was gone, but heat still continued on, and it felt like day and felt like night and everything was still the same, but like plants are kind of dependent upon sun for everything, So heat is still a thing, but people are starting to run out of oxygen in places where there's not a lot of plants, and they can't photosynthesis and they start to slowly die, but people are still here. And now there's this crazy escape plan of like, how the heck do we get out of here to somewhere else? Because it's still heated normal, but we can't breathe anymore, and we're slowly running out of that. Like all of the ramifications that happen because of that, is just really intriguing for me to watch a civilization just implode in on itself because there's no light, but it's still heat, and like how do people worry at different levels? There's just a ton of stuff that could be really fun to play with.
Well, the
with that
worry
idea.
about plants like made me think of, well, what if you could go two ways with that and say that the campaign is maybe an expedition to the Underdark to bring back plants that don't need light to the surface because now we need to, like, that's the problem that needs to be fixed. Or it just goes the other way and all of a sudden the Underdark and the inhabitants of the Underdark are like, hey, surface world ain't so bad anymore. Time to go up there, and it's time for us to take over. And so the Underdark just spills over into the surface world because the light of the surface world is for most creatures the thing that's kind of holding them back. It's just uncomfortable to be in the sunlight. But if that's gone now, you've got drow and dwarger and even friendlier creatures like Smurf Neblin, like that are able to come up and start expanding their territory.
Well, did the Underdark have something to do with it? You know, did they have a big, I can't even remember the item's name from Harry Potter, but that steals the light, you know? They have a massive one of those that stole the light out of the sky.
Deluminator, yeah.
Deluminator, that's what it is. Did they have a massive one of those? We don't figure that out for a really long time until somebody from the Underdark is captured and you get that information out of it, and then there's a whole adventure to go and get this massive deluminator to put the light back in its rightful place, which then could be the entire thing that ends the war that has now happened because the Underdark is trying to come up and take over.
Crazy.
Yeah, part of it was thinking about like a journey to the center of the earth, because another concept is that the earth in your world stopped spinning, which is all kinds of bad in terms of like how gravity functions and just everything functions. So maybe it's this literal journey to the center of the earth to find out what's wrong and restart it.
Yeah.
And then you get to the center of the earth and you're like, oh, there's a sun here. Perfect. We'll just take this one.
We'll just deluminate this one and bring it up to the surface.
Nothing
Great.
bad can happen.
Nothing. So that was my number 9.
Perfect. Which means, Chris, what is your number 8?
All right, so my number 8 is you are on an adventure with your group, and all of a sudden, one of your party members recognizes someone who's long been dead, either from their family or a friend or somebody that they know there's no possible way that they should be seeing them right now. This figure who's in front of them remembers everything, remembers who they are, the fun times that they had together, but nobody else can see that person. But that person that sees the person that's undead, or not undead, but actually in front of them, is 100% convinced that they're real in front of them, but nobody else can see them.
So you let it slip, the undead. So were you thinking kind of
No, that was
a ghost?
just a slip. I wasn't thinking undead or a ghost. I was thinking like this person in front of them is actually real, but nobody else can see them, hear them, feel them, except for that person that's in front of them.
So I'll take it off
that they
of that.
recognize.
I'll take it off of that then. So I think for me, the first thing that I think about is a spirit. And that's something that I think probably most players would try to figure out pretty quick. Can I touch this person? Like, or does my hand just go through it? Like, I feel like once it's stated nobody else is seeing them, that's going to be probably the first thought. But with ghosts, I always think of the ghost lore that their spirits can attach themselves to certain objects or places. So I guess maybe this is a ghost that is attached to an item that player is carrying, or why not have it be attached to a person? Because perhaps they have unfinished business with that person that is seeing them, and that's the only reason why that's the person that is the only person that can see this spirit.
Yeah, one of my things is, well, two things that came up, and then we'll move away because I don't really like either of them, is it made me think of, I'm just being honest, since 8 in Netflix, where it's the 8
Yep.
people that were born at the exact same second, so they're all connected in this very interesting way.
Oh, sure.
The other thought was some magical means. So I finished watching all of The Dragon Prince, also on Netflix.
Oh, yeah.
And so then there's a connection between two of the characters there. But my thought was the scale that you want this to be at, because it does shine a big spotlight on an individual character. And I thought, how much more interesting would it be that it happens to a second character?
Right.
So
yeah.
you're having
that's interesting.
these really weird conversations with this one character and kind of these side whispers, and then it happens to someone else. But then does that second person see both of them? Do they only see their own? And just so it expands out so that it's not so much focus on one character for an extended portion of time.
Yeah, well, then you're even getting into. Do you guys remember the show? I think it was called The Return that ABC tried to do for a little while, where people from the town that had long been dead, like, slowly started coming back to life.
Oh, yep.
You remember that? But like, nobody can see them, and even if that person was killed again, they still came back to this one town. You know, and like, yeah, what if that slowly started happening? Because in that show, it started with just one person, and then it was like hundreds of people started coming back slowly, and it's like just this weird moment of like, why, if we're going with the spirit thing, are all of a sudden they coming back, but only one person can see them? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Can we trust them even though they're here and want to be kind and friendly to us, it seems?
Or you take that a step farther with your thought process through that and go, all right, well, this is the first encounter you're having. But then as you're traveling closer to this, wherever you're traveling, a town, a city, whatever, the next player sees another person that, again, same story, you know is dead. But at the same time, like, they don't seem dead. But only one PC can see them. And you could have this happen multiple times to the point where each character is, like, seeing people from their past, and maybe there's a connection to like, oh, well, we're only seeing people from our past, or maybe it's like a mixture of like, well, why are you seeing my father? Why am I not seeing my father? And like, is it something to do with the area they're in, that this is some magic that happens? Or, I mean, in the end, it could also be a trick, right? It could be some sort of illusion that some god or wizard or whatever is playing on these adventures. But yeah, what an interesting thing to happen. I mean, role playing would certainly be there'd be so many weird role playing opportunities that would have the door opened for this to be happening.
Well, I think that's an interesting idea that you said of like, what if somebody's father that's in the party can only be seen by somebody who is not their child? And like, they're talking about this person that's like in front of them and they can see them, and one of the PCs is finally like, are you talking to my dad? Like, what sort of interesting moments would that create for your players if everybody started having that happening, where somebody's family member was attaching themselves to somebody else in the party?
And that might create some turmoil too. Like, why is my dad appearing to you, not me? What? Like, there might be a lot of anger there. There might be some like in-party fighting, which of course you always want to make sure is done in the right way. But like,
right. Yeah.
My thought would be have that be purely random, that maybe these spirits are connected some way to their relative, and then, okay, two ideas I had. One is it's a distance thing. So the person that died the farthest away from one of the party members will be the last one to show up. But once they get close enough to where they're supposed to be, literally just randomly roll and say, this person is connected to here because they got close enough, but by mishap or whatever. So it could be that and then just the idea of like, okay, so character A, their father connects to character B, but then character C, like their mom connects to them. And it's like, what? Wait, what?
Why is this happening? I don't get what happens. Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. But that means, Chris, what is your number 7?
All right. So along the same lines as people returning from the dead, a formerly once great army that vanished at sea returns to the land that they once called home 500 years later, and nothing is the same.
Fantastic. I feel like this is this inspired from a TV show? I feel like this.
No, it's not. Not that I know. I literally came up with these on my drive to work one day, so I had nothing in front of me to watch or be inspired by.
I mean, The idea of some characters, probably like I feel like we've talked about like PCs traveling through time and this happening to player characters before on the show, but like whether you put your PCs in this army or this is something that happens and your PCs are able to experience it and talk to this army, like this is a whole army that has disappeared and is returning. And yeah, I mean, as a playable character, my first question would be, I'd want to ask them like, where did you go? What happened? Did you go somewhere else? Like, or did they just lose time? But if they lost time, I guess I would throw out the other option of, do they return to the city that they came from, or do they show up 500 years too late to the battle that they were supposed to go to and try to ransack a city that is like 500 years later when they have like peace treaties and things like that going on? Like they could really
that would be interesting.
Throw a loop for how these two nations have developed for 500 years when all of a sudden like flags and banners are coming over the hill for an army and the one nation is like, what the heck? Like we haven't fought with them for so long.
That's a really interesting idea. I like that a lot.
Well, and although the likelihood that all of these people are displaced too.
Yeah.
Like where is home? Like where do they get to have home is another really big conversation. Do they start, I mean, in a way, do they start their own land? Do they restart the land that they came from? Because it's 500 years. It could easily just not exist at all.
Yeah, like it could be a long forgotten nation at that point.
Yeah.
And if this was an army that was supposed to go and fight an important battle and they just disappeared, that could be the cause of that nation not being around anymore.
Yeah.
Totally, yeah, because they were just defenseless and then just got taken over because they had no idea if that was ever going to come back.
And then you have to have wizards and historians and clerics of gods like getting together and having these discussions in your world about like, okay, this is a very strange occurrence, but the thing that maybe we need to be asking ourselves is, can this happen again? Because this caused waves throughout our history in the way that the world powers, who was a world power, what happens next time that an entire army or an entire city gets displaced from time? How is this going to affect us? Is there a way that we can get to the bottom of this so we can stop this from ever happening again?
Yeah.
The other thing that I was thinking, because it sounds like our conversation is going one way, and maybe you guys have thought of it as well, but what if the players are part of this fleet?
Yeah, Mitch had mentioned that really briefly, but we hadn't touched on that yet as a potential aspect.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Of like, okay, we've arrived. We clearly see this is not what we're expecting, and the players are the group that are on kind of the rowboat to go figure out what's going on.
It's a really fresh idea for starting an adventure. Like, so what do you do for, a creation night?
That's what I was
thinking. It's just like, hey, we have all of these backstories, and then it's just like, none of them matter.
You present to them a world 500 years in the present, but what you know is going to be 500 years in the past. Or like you jump ahead even further in time, and all of a sudden you have like muskets being used. And like, oh man, for your players to go into a campaign, I could see that being done poorly, that players feel like you just pulled the rug out from underneath them, being like, this is not what you told us this adventure was going to be. But I could see some players really being like, oh my gosh, this is not what we were told that this was going to be, and this is such a crazy thing for us to deal with in a good way.
Yeah, or is the entire campaign then like trying to figure out what happened so that they can go back in time because they wanted to experience that entire backstory. So this is interesting. It might not be an entire campaign, but is it like 5 or 6 of the first sessions in order to get back, where then they don't take their backstory for granted anymore because you've helped them become emotionally attached to it, and now they can live into that a little bit more, that they're back where they were supposed to be.
I mean, I know if I was one of these PCs, my first thing would be, I'd want to be like, like we were going off to fight this important battle. What happened to my home? What happened to my family? And then like, if you then go and find out, like, first of all, like you're going to go and you're going to talk to a historian. They're going to be like, if this is true, if you're really from this time, you recognize that everybody that you know is dead, right? And like, you're going to be like, of course I do. But then to find out in the history books that your homeland was like taken over and many people were killed in battle because there wasn't an army to defend them. Yeah, like you're going to want to get back. You're going to want to like save your family because even though they've been quote unquote dead for 1,000 years or whatever, like they're still your family. And you're going, yeah, but does time mean anything at this point? Like, can we get back? Can we change this?
Yeah.
Great. I love it.
Are we on number 6 now? I can't remember.
We are at number 6
Okay.
now.
Okay, great. All right, so guys, my number 6 one is this. A giant sinkhole swallows a third of a city. It's deep, and no one can see the bottom. They can't hear anything. They can't smell anything. It's just a massive sinkhole. They walk up, try dropping things down, can't hear anything. But it's not like they could just fill it back in. They now have this massive sinkhole that's just in their city. So what caused it? What are they going to do about it? Who knows? It could be a really interesting adventure hook to start something off.
So is it the entire city in your thought process, or is it
No,
part
just
of the
like
city?
a third of the city.
Okay, I mean that's
fell
still
into the sinkhole.
that's still a lot of lives. That's still a huge area of land, a third of a city. Like, and you threw out that idea of like, well, they can't just fill it in or whatever. But I wonder if through some magical means, somebody decides to cast a spell just to see. Maybe it's a spell that allows them to know whether someone is alive or dead, and they use it to find out if someone who is supposed to be in that third of a city is alive or dead, and they figure out that they're alive. And they go, all right, well, let me try another person, and they're also alive. And they continue to go, and everybody that seemingly was in this part of the city is still alive. You're not going to want to fill it in, right? Because you go,
Right.
Are they down there? Are they somewhere else? Like, how... Again, is there a
Well,
way
how
that
did
we
they
can get...
survive if they
Yeah.
can't see or hear the bottom?
Yeah,
Are
well,
they
and then
still
you
alive?
go... Then I think if you're talking about what the adventure is, my PC is going to go, it's time to go on an expedition. Like, let's get some really, really long rope because we're going down.
Yeah, right.
Well, I think it would be pretty fun to do that at a little bit of a higher level when you start having access to either magical means or whatever to just fly or
Totally.
Get your
basically
feather
travel down
fall
a giant
ring
hole.
and just jump.
Also, obviously, this ties back to number 10, and nobody believed that little boy, but he was right.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so
Oh, that's
good. What a
interesting.
good tie-in.
Yeah.
The little boy just shows up at the sinkhole and is like, see, I told you.
Yeah, maybe that's what he was warning them of, is that they were
Yeah.
doing something that was going to cause that to happen.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and the little boy's just like, ha ha, I told you.
Oh, I mean, we're saying that, but it could also be the twist that is like the BBEG.
Yeah, the little
Oh,
boy.
and then he just disappears into like a little spiral of smoke or something. Ooh.
Oh, what do you mean? Jumps off into the
Oh,
hole.
man.
Oh, jumps off and gives a peace sign and sticks his tongue out at him.
And, well, and he has
That'd
to,
be fun.
before he does that, he has to say the rest of your city will fall under the same, like, catastrophe. You have 30 days. And then jump down, right? Like, has to
Oh,
give
gosh.
that, like, scary, like...
Give the ominous,
More
hey,
is
you've got to
coming,
come
yeah.
after me sort
Yeah.
of thing. Yeah. That's cool.
Way to tie that in, Neal. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, we're halfway there,
Halfway.
and that means, Chris, what is your number 5?
So my number 5 is there's an animal that appears that is obviously alien in nature, that appears on the planet and shows up to your adventurers and becomes very friendly and attaches himself to them. It doesn't leave, but all of a sudden you hear these weird rumblings around the world that there is somebody looking for this creature. And everywhere this person goes, there's destruction following them.
The person that is looking for the creature.
Yeah, the person that's looking for the creature either has an
It's
army or
causing
has people
destruction.
coming after this creature. But it's a creature nobody's ever seen before. It's not home to this world in any way, shape, or form that the players know of. But apparently it is stinking important.
I like the idea of this creature not being like, at least seemingly super intelligent, so that it makes it a little bit hard to like protect it. Like, this is the kind of creature that maybe like it's all right, like maybe it's kind of like a baby Yoda situation, right? Or a baby like creature that it's just like,
Oh, sure.
it'll wander off. You're like, oh, we need to keep this thing a secret. And while you and your group are huddling and saying, we need to keep this thing a secret, this creature is like wandering off into the middle of town and trying to like eat like from the hands of the citizens there.
Chicky nuggies!
But then, just like a Baby Yoda situation, there's a moment where all of a sudden, not to do harm, but because this is a super powerful creature, it lets off some sort of force or magical power, or it could even be a benevolent thing, like that it's able to bless or turn metal into gold or something like that. Just have some sort of crazy power that there's this moment of, oh my gosh, this is why they're hunting for this.
The other thing I thought was that the creatures searching for it are also alien.
Like a bunch of Githyanki or something like that. Yeah.
That's
with
exactly
their
what I was
airships like
thinking.
flying over cities. And I mean, that's you don't get much more alien in a D&D world than Githyanki ships floating over your city. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Hopefully. Well, I mean, there's a couple ways that we've talked about it before, because you could definitely start the campaign at a lower level, knowing that that's coming, and then in your mind having the place your players need to be at before they have that big confrontation. But I wonder if it's some kind of creature that can help them forge the swords for the Githyanki, because that's a super big thing. And if they can't do that anymore, then like, what does that entire race of people do?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, tying it in with something that, like, if they don't have this creature, for whatever reason this creature tried to escape, it's super intelligent, it knows. Because it tried to escape, it's trying to be on the run, but this civilization can't really exist without it. So, yeah, then your players are caught, like, in this really big conundrum. Like, so to go off of the sword example, the Githyanki aren't really here to take over. They're just here for this animal. They'll leave you alone if you give them the animal. But you also know, like, this animal's trying to escape. And, like, why is it trying to escape? Are there reasons that the players would not want to give this back? And then it's a big galactic war of some kind because of it. That's fascinating to me.
Done. I like it. Which means, Chris, what is your number 4?
So my number 4 is players wake up one morning and people who were once their neighbors or shop owners or whatever it are still look the same, but they no longer have the same memories of who the players are. They remember, like, the faces, and they remember the names, but everything they talk about, like the things that happened yesterday with them or what happened weeks ago or months ago, none of it's the same. Some people are still the same. Some people are different. They remember different things.
And I'm trying to figure out why. I immediately took the role of a player. Like, why is this happening?
Yeah, right? But even, like, I mean, so pretend that lords and ladies and people that are in positions of power are no longer the same, too. And they have different memories of how things have happened. And they come into a city now, and it's like, okay, everything's completely different. And nothing's the same anymore.
So, like, different people have different memories.
Yeah, or is it a multiverse thing where all of a sudden some people have switched places with other people in a multiverse?
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, that something weird got screwed up and now nobody's in the same place.
Chris, every single like thing that you've done is just taking people away from their families. You're such a home wrecker. Like, even you're like, no, they still have their husband, but that's not their husband. That's their other multiverse husband.
I will say the last 3 have nothing to do with that. So it'll be totally on you guys to skew them in that way.
I guess that's true.
Okay.
I'm skewing it.
Well, we'll make sure.
Okay, great.
How do you fix that? Obviously, you have to figure out, as the person running the game, why that happened, and then, or do you fix it?
Can you fix it? Or does this just
Yeah,
completely again affect the dynamic of your world. And
Well, and like you're saying, that's the big thing is this the campaign or is this the campaign setting? And
Sure.
Yeah.
those are the two different things. Because I kind of like the idea of just the whole world just being in this weird sense of disarray.
Yeah, the thing I was thinking about is like, does it happen 3 or 4 times, and then all of a sudden everything's back to the way that it was, and now people are like, is this going to happen again? Are we good? Like, it's kind of remembered as this like really weird event that people are always wary of happening again, and then that's maybe when the adventure starts. Is like, okay, why did that happen? So it's not a constant state of chaos, like, because I think that would be really hard to run for somebody as a dungeon master, and for players it would get really chaotic. But say it happens for 4 days in a row, different people are showing up, your PCs go to different places, whatever it might be, and then everybody's back to where they were. Everything's the same, but everybody remembers this weird thing happened.
Oh man, that's a lot of fun between sessions, having one-on-one discussions with each of your players about how weird things are.
Yeah.
And then when they come back to the session, they're not that way anymore.
Right.
I like it. Although, let's all be honest with each other. Everyone listening has the 2 players they know won't respond. But,
Oh yeah, totally.
Oh, it's normal.
Totally.
yeah.
okay, so what else you got for us?
All right. Number 3.
All right, number 3. A giant 50-foot spear falls from the sky and crashes into the ground just outside of town.
Oh man.
Anytime anyone touches it, they disappear. I guess this one has some home wrecking tendencies too.
We didn't even have to do
Man.
anything.
Yeah, you didn't even have to do it. Dang it, I didn't read too far into my notes. I wrote them like 3 days ago. Shoot.
I was immediately going to have it be like, oh no, the old hermit who lives just outside of town.
Yeah. Right.
Grandpa.
So, giant 50-foot spear falls, sticks in the ground. Anyone who touches it disappears.
That's terrifying. And
Well,
my
so, like, one
immediate
person-
thought as somebody who lives in that city is, did they mean to hit us? Like, are they throwing another spear soon?
But it looks just like a spear that somebody you might see carrying around to defend either their farm or a part of the army. But it's 50 feet tall.
In a lot of settings in D&D, there are acts of gods that affect the world. And that would be my thought, is that somehow this is the battle of gods that has now affected the material plane. That it is literally an errant spear that has fallen, and now everyone that touches it, I can almost see like this cult forming around it, and then like the assumption that I will ascend by touching it. I don't know that that's what happens to the people, but that is the assumption. And then there's basically the cult of the spear, like forming around.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because, like nobody ever comes, like pretend 50 years later, nobody ever comes for it. It's just still there. They can't touch it because they'll disappear, but it's just there and it never deteriorates. It doesn't fall over. It's just there outside of the city.
I love that idea that it's like mortals are like, oh my gosh, what does this mean? Like, let's get together every single priest of every single god. Let's examine this. Let's cast lots. We've got to commune with the spirits. We've got to figure out the meaning of this. And I love, Neal, that you're just like, yeah, it was just a miss from like gods are fighting and it just hit the earth. And
Whoopsies.
then like there isn't meaning behind it as far as the context that these mortals are trying to figure out. I mean, there is meaning in the fact that it's like, oh man, so when gods fight, like we could all just get completely obliterated. Like that's scary. But I think that the mortals would be like, what is going on? What is the meaning here? And to be like, nah, not really. That's not really the question you should be asking. But then, yeah, the idea of like ascending to me, I think of like if gods are fighting, the fact of like in D&D lore, you can only actually kill a god if they are in their plane of existence. So I wonder if this is a god weapon infused with some sort of magic that was supposed to hit another god, the other god enemy, to send them back to their plane of existence where maybe an ambush was waiting for them. And so anybody who's touching the spear is getting sent to fill in the blank plane of existence where this god is from. It could be a good place. It could be a much less than good place. But oh man, that's that disappearing thing. And that might even be where the adventure starts. Is your PCs all decide, you have this surrounding line of town's guard or city guard now being like, no, don't, you can't get close. You'll be gone forever. And the leader of the city is looking for heroes that are brave enough to go where few have gone before and try to figure this out. You may die, but that is a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Good quote. Is that Shrek, right?
Shrek.
Lord Farquaad?
Yep, you got it.
Well, on that note, Chris, what is your number 2?
So my number 2 is that every night at the same time, there's a great rumbling throughout the city. There's a loud bang, and then there's a bright blue light that slowly ascends up from the ground, engulfs the city for about 10 minutes, and then just slowly goes back down into the ground. Doesn't do anything to the city, doesn't hurt anyone. It just kind of happens every so often. Nobody knows why, but it's just kind of annoying.
And so the city of Rave Town was created.
And with it, each time your loved one disappears.
Yeah, great, awesome.
A family member.
Nice.
So a light is coming up from the ground.
After a really intense few seconds of rumbling, a loud bang, and then the blue light just slowly starts to ascend from the ground.
I mean, I don't know if I want to tie it back in so early, but I almost want to tie this in as a scene as maybe a good thing to your, I believe it was your number 9, where the world completely loses all sunlight. And so let's just throw more chaos into this wacky world and say this is a city that in a normal world, maybe this would be seen as well, we can't live here anymore. This is ridiculous. But now you have people coming to the city because this is almost like the closest they're gonna get again to a sunrise, right? This bright orb rising and then lowering. And so you have maybe it's even a small village that this happens at, or a natural landmark, and the city even builds itself around it to be able to enjoy this. Because we'd have to figure out so how long does this light stay in the sky? Does it stay in the sky for a full day's time? Is it a couple minute thing? Those things change how people would react to it. And the Big Bang could simply be your alarm clock going off in the morning.
So everybody's up for the sunrise.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of the rooster crowing, the earth just shook again.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I still want that little kid to come out again.
Yeah, I was thinking I was tying it in somehow.
Again, it just goes back to the idea that someone's doing something and you need to get under where you are to figure out what's going on. And sometimes I like the idea of it not being malintent, because I think that obviously makes for more nuance and more discussion.
Sure.
It's not someone being evil and then you just stop them. It's someone trying to do something good that has these ill effects.
Well, does the person not even know that the things are happening?
Yeah.
And it's just it's something that they have to do every single day. Whether they're below the ground or whatever it is, they don't know that because of the thing that they're doing is creating this effect above them to this city.
Yeah.
And so you have to go down and hey, can you please move? Or no, I have to do this right here. Or is it a shrine of some sort that below the ground there's a civilization that is worshiping, and every morning they have this ritual that they have to do. And it just so happens that this town is right above where it has to happen. And so it shakes the entire ground, and then there's this blue light that pops up every morning.
It's the inverse
As
of
an
a noisy apartment being upstairs. You just got one downstairs for your city. But I mean,
Downstairs
yeah, like
neighbors.
what if there's like a wizard it's like an experiment, and this wizard lives in the Underdark, and they don't know that this is happening above the surface every time that they're trying to figure out this new magic spell, or it is some sort of creature that is trying to escape from inside the earth, and this orb is this manifestation of whatever spell it's casting, and so maybe it's just a visual aspect of it.
So with that, we're finally here. Chris, what is your number one idea?
All right, so my number one is this. The gods want to hold a gods tournament, and so they send envoys of messengers throughout the entire world. Not just to hold a gods tournament, but the gods tournament prize is that the person that wins for each of the gods, so there's individual tournaments for each god, will become a demigod that serves that god.
That's fantastic. I love this idea so much. And I'm thinking, I'm wondering to myself, has Chris seen Dragon Ball Super yet? Because
I have not.
I a little bit
yeah.
am like, oh man, that I could use that as inspiration for this cool idea. But man, that's I mean, there you go. There's your players are signing up for that tournament, right? And like maybe like part of that tournament is team battles, and at the very end of that, it's like, yeah, but there can only be one, so it's time for you guys to fight each other and see who ascends, and then you have a PC becoming a god. Oh my gosh, that'd be so cool for your players.
So I recently was rewatching Naruto because sometimes I just need something on, and
You need to learn your running. Yeah, you need to learn your running form again.
Well, yeah, I was gonna go to Area 51, but I knew I didn't have the right skills.
Planning for this year's upcoming.
Yeah. And they start out, so part of their exam basically to become a stronger ninja, if you will, is they start out with their 3-person team. They go through a trial, but then in the end, yeah, they are totally just matched up one-on-one through a tournament to see if they have enough skill to go to that next level. So that would be a really interesting thing, is even if it's the second half of a campaign. And so your party enters this tournament together, but then it breaks down and they have to start battling one-on-one.
Yeah. Well, the idea that I had was like, why are they wanting to create demigods? Like, what's the reason behind that if they've never had them before? Are they worried about something happening, and so that's why they're creating some of these demigods? Are they scared for their lives and they need more reinforcements? Like, why are they creating the demigods is the interesting question, I think, to flush out for a GM that maybe the players won't know because they just get so infatuated with the idea of like, oh, well, duh, yeah, I want to be a demigod. That sounds awesome.
Man, I feel like we could have a whole episode on this. I think you chose well for your number one. This is such a cool idea. Like, because to me, like now I'm going, all right, so is ascending to a demigod a thing that happens as your final like reward for winning the tournament? Or is everyone in the tournament, as they progress through this tournament, are they becoming more and more close to becoming a demigod? And like there will only be one winner and maybe one survivor. So, but as you progress along, you get new powers, and maybe you like are rewarded a weapon created by the gods or something like that. And so your PCs are constantly like leveling up, but also being granted different demigod powers as they go. That to me would be like a really cool aspect to it, but only one person will survive this and be able to keep these powers.
Oh, and that's an interesting thing. Like, yeah, I think if one person's only able to survive, your players have to kill each other potentially, and like how after, if you do it at the end of an adventure, like how hard is that for your players to do? Like that could be really, really hard for your players to enter into.
Yeah, and I mean, it definitely starts and finishes. This isn't really the kind of campaign that then has the second arc, but I love that idea. Like you already have a built-in epilogue of that one PC transcending. And maybe they don't die. Maybe they know that they'll be put back where they were and have no idea.
or they don't know that going into it,
Mm-hmm.
and like that's what happens when you exit. It's just like, well, just back to normal, and you know that person didn't win, but nobody else, like none of the other players that are still competing in the tournament, know that happened.
I've talked about this before. I really like my gods to be flawed, and I feel like this is the prime opportunity to like show like some really terrible flaws in your pantheon if this is what you want to do. Because as much as like we're talking about this and we're like, oh man, this would be cool, like I'm thinking about the Rick and Morty episode with the Cromulons, the floating heads that
sure.
come to like watch
Sure.
over the earth, and they're like, all right, perform a talent show for us or we'll destroy
Show
your
me
planet.
what you've got.
Show me what you got. But like I imagine like what if like the gods all of a sudden just appear in the sky, like sitting on their thrones, looking down upon your world, and like so now like that's a normal thing in your world. You're looking up at the gods, and maybe this tournament lasts for like 100 years or something, and this is the sight you look up to see. And so like you have like the local farmer, like this is their day. They look up and they see the gods, but the tournament, the place that the tournament is held is the entire world. And so every single person who wants to enter can enter and fight for this. And it's almost like these gods are just using this, your mortal plane, for almost like a survivor to the death TV show, reality show, and they're just loving every second of it. And they come in and throw in little twists like, well, guess what? We really liked this person, and so by vote of the gods, we're bringing them back from the dead for a second chance. Like, you could put like this disgustingly dark twist on like reality TV for this tournament.
Yeah, I mean that brings back like, I mean, you think about Roman history, like people would sponsor gladiators, and like could the immortals become like celebrities to the gods, who the gods are then sponsoring, and are they taking them aside and training them in some ways, different techniques, and like,
yeah, is there illegal interference from the gods? Like they're like use magic and send them like gifts that like that's not part of the rules. And so maybe there's this head honcho god that like set the rules, but every other god, they're all just flawed. And so like every single one of them is like, yeah, we're gonna take a risk and throw them a sword of like complete destruction or something like that.
sure.
And so,
but then I think too, like, what if some gods get caught interfering like that? Is that the reason that a god's war starts? AKA a massive spear comes hurtling to the ground because they tried to throw it at somebody.
yes.
And then like the gods wars start because of this tournament that was originally intended to just be fun for the gods, but then just devolves into something that is terrible for all existence, gods included in that.
And what if with these careless gods, there's a price to pay every time you accept one of their gifts or their powers? Like that, this idea of destruction happening every single time. So maybe your PCs are fighting in the tournament. They're all about it. They're totally in it. And then they get granted these god weapons and they go to fight this other person who is another person in the tournament. But by throwing down that god sword, it destroys everything in the area, including all the local farmers in the area and their cattle and their like everything. And there's this moment of like, oh man, is the adventure now still to continue in this tournament, or is the adventure to try to figure out how to stop this tournament? Which I mean is that's a pretty crazy thing to have your PCs try to do, but why not? It's D&D. Let your PCs do whatever they want.
Do just about anything.
Yep.
Yeah.
Also, obviously, one of the players' family members was one of those farmers. Good job, Mitch.
Yeah.
We did it.
We did it. But there it is. Chris, those are your top 10s.
So fantastic.
Woo! Glad to be back and give them.
Yes, I'm sure all of our listeners are super pumped to have you back, to have you spewing out top 10s once again. If our listeners would like to write in, maybe they want to give further ideas on some of Chris's top 10s, or they have top 10s of their own they'd like to share with us, Neal, where can they get in touch with us at?
As always, you can email us at dungeonmasterblock@gmail.com.
We would also really love your feedback in the form of a 5-star review in whatever podcast app you use. So go on there, leave us a review. We'll be sure to find it and share the love on the podcast in a future episode.
If you want updates about the show, you can follow us on Twitter at DMS_block. That's at DMsBlock, or you can like our Facebook page.
As always, the Dungeon Masters Block is a proud member of the Block Party Podcast Network, where you can check out other shows like DMnastics, Dungeons and Dragons and Daughters, Detentions and Dragons, and more.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Dungeon Masters Block, the place where we come to talk about the Dungeon Master, the most important person in the game, the only person capable of playing God,
Killing characters,
And lowering the ego of everyone else at the table.
Adios, amigos.
Good night and good luck.
and keep on dungeon mastering. Boom. Visual aspect of it. All right, I gotta go take care of my cats. I'll be back.
Go for it.
He's going to take care of them.
Take care of him. He's going to take him outside.
Literally.
Literally. Literally.
Oh,
Hey.
not my intent.
Or your malintent. I don't really know.
Yeah.
Who knows? Papa, play with us. Play with us.
You can always email us at dungeon. Oh, wait.
Oh,
I
no.
just
I
remembered
started
how-
something
no.
terrible.
But this episode's coming
You
out
did the-
first, so Neal's the one that gets to look like he's the one that messes it all up for everybody else.
But you did.
Oh, yeah,
because
that's true.
honestly, I messed up because I started laughing at how bad you messed up last
I
time.
know. I know.
I have to say, I'm saying the. Why do I keep saying the?
Goodbye.